Hi Lindsay, great to have you here with us today. Now I understand you're involved in Fresh Expressions. Can you tell us a little bit about what Fresh Expressions is?
Hi Graeme, thanks for the invite to be here. Let me roll that back a little bit. In the Western world context, the majority of people these days are not particularly interested in attending inherited church anymore. And so the question of mission is about how do we engage the culture in a way that's now considered like being cross-cultural. Fresh Expressions has become an umbrella term that is describing people's examples and ventures of trying to engage in those ways.
So, okay, Fresh Expressions, but why Fresh Expressions here in New Zealand?
Okay, I think we see out of the UK scene something that's of significance that we think can give us some further support and resource beyond what we're already doing here. In the UK itself, between the years of 2005 and 2012, over 2,000 new church plants took place of a fresh expression kind, if you like, that were outside the existing inherited church. And along with that was the establishment of significant training, both in the theological colleges but also for lay people. And seeing what was happening around the country in New Zealand, we thought there's something that we can partner with that could be of significant value for us here.
So there is a sense of being strategic here. So in importing or using this framework of Fresh Expressions, what strategic developments are happening in embracing this overarching idea in terms of New Zealand? What's some of the strategic plans around that in terms of its development here?
I think there are lots of individuals who are seeking to run fresh communities of faith, whether it's through cafes, whether it's in school environments, whether it's in local neighbourhoods, but it's happening quite piecemeal, and no one denomination has really got a particularly good handle on that. And so the idea here was to form a partnership across the denominations that could support one another and resource one another for the development of this, not only for those pioneers who had taken the initiative and stepped out, but that denominations and local churches themselves could actually engage in this in a much more significant way.
So, Lindsay, this hopefully lots of people involved, but who's involved? What denominations are part of this umbrella of Fresh Expressions?
Coming out of the UK, it was essentially Church of England, but what they discovered when they began to talk about that with the Church of England here in New Zealand was that many denominations were already interested to get on the journey and partner together. And so right at the start 3 years ago, Anglican, Baptist, Presbyterian, Methodist, Wesleyan Methodist all got involved together on the ground in forming a partnership that would establish a trust, establish a mechanism nationally for the delivery and the resourcing of some training.
So we've talked a little bit about this, and so across New Zealand there are different pockets or areas. Could you tell me a little bit about just the structure of that? Auckland, Christchurch, how does that work?
There is a national body in the partnership, and it's partnering with UK, Fresh Expressions UK, but the delivery of the primary 1-year training course is done regionally. And so a region establishes its own team out of that partnership and any others who want to join with them, and determines the timing and the venue and who the teachers are and so on. So Christchurch has just finished their first year's course. Auckland and Palmerston North are halfway through at the moment. My own personal involvement, I am involved at the national level, but in the delivery of the course I'm heading up the Auckland team and doing that.
I mean, you're passionate about it, I can see that. But just can you tease that out for me? What really kind of lights you up that you you're really excited about Fresh Expression. You see this as a vehicle. It's not just a program, but something beyond that. Personally, what attracted you to Fresh Expressions?
What grabs me is the question of mission. How do we engage a culture that has shifted away in its value system from its inherited Christian faith? And I think we've added to some of that issue because churches have established sacred spaces within their buildings and are now having to come to terms with the secular environment, if you like. We don't like to divide those things up, but that's the reality. We've actually added to the problem. And so now you have many Christians engaging in church community quite separate to what's going on in life around them and of their neighbours and of their work colleagues. And so the big challenge for me and encouragement for me is to say, how do we come in under the radar, engage the culture in the places where the people are, and the gospel being relevant in that context?
So what hopes do you have? You kind of got this thing, this baby, and obviously things are happening around the place, which we'll go to in a minute about some personal stories. But so, what are your big picture? What would you love to see? What are you hoping for?
There are many individuals who are already doing initiatives, taking initiatives, establishing fresh communities. I think part of what can happen here is strengthening the network of support that goes on for those people. Alongside that, I think many people of especially the next generation are asking, how can I be effective in mission? And here's an opportunity to engage, to church plant in a fresh way, to do mission locally that is effective for the gospel. And so local churches being equipped, a next generation of leaders being mobilised. I'd like to believe that there will be hundreds and hundreds of people and new faith communities that are birthed around the nation in the next couple of decades.
Sounds great. What's happening on the ground at the moment? There are some stories that you can tell. I mean, you obviously pastor a church in central Auckland, and you're involved in this. What are some of the things that you're interacting with that you see that really excites you in terms of Fresh Expressions?
There's quite a range of things, some of which have birthed themselves, not necessarily directly engaging with Fresh Expressions, like the Crave Cafe environment in Kingsland, where two families took the initiative to purchase a living space above some shops, began to say, we want to simply incarnate into this community, begin to share the gospel story and form community in the midst of it, while serving locally through the cafe. And that's a fantastic developing community of people. Long way to go. Another one would be in the central city of Auckland, a work amongst people of Muslim background who struggle, of course, to come into existing church families, but what's called a Friends of Friends fellowship that is engaging with Muslim people and working with them to bridge their understanding between what they see as truth in the Quran and what the Bible teaches, and of course in the end, who is Jesus in the midst of that. So you've got some communities of faith amongst Muslim people, amongst people of all different sorts of ethnic backgrounds. A completely different one again is the work that goes on with children and communities, establishing what many would see as another congregation of a church, not necessarily looking that different to an existing congregation, but purposely shaped around the engagement of children and the generations together. And so creating a new community that church otherwise would have struggled to meet.
And I mean, some of these ones are you're running a course at the moment, I understand, as you mentioned before. So what's some of the candidates, not candidates, some of those that are in this course, what are some of the things that they're doing?
We've got people in the Auckland course who are asking the question, I live in this suburb, how can I form with some other Christians to engage the people in this suburb who have not got any interest to go to existing churches? How do I bring the gospel story and community to them? So we've got some people in that situation. We've got people who are purposely trying to run ministries in places where people are in numbers, like AUT as a training organisation. There are ministries trying to stand among the students and do the same thing in that particular environment. We also have people who are training for ministry theologically at the moment, and their intention is to take up pastoring in a local church, but to then see that church effectively engage the particular community where it's placed. So people are coming from all different places. We often talk about neighbourhood and network and nation. Neighbourhood is, where do I live? How are those people to hear the gospel? Network is stratas of people that are across cities or across communities, and nations are all the different ethnicities that are among us. Quite different things, lots of innovation, all needing incarnation to work, but a whole range of things that can happen as new faith communities that might emerge.
So, as a pastor, as a church leader, I'm interested in mission. And I go, one of the struggles is how do I translate what is my community, what is my context, and I'm wrestling with that. How could something like Fresh Expressions and what you're trying to facilitate with some of the education, and how could that work in my context? What would I do as a church leader? I say I live in Tauranga or I live in Wellington, and I hear about Fresh Expressions. Now, we've made the point it's not a program, but how could I access and how could I relate to this in my context and use what you're offering?
I think the course that is offering can be available for two primary groups of people. Those who already have some theological training or are doing that at the moment can pick it up as part of their learning environment so that they themselves personally get equipped. The other one is where people are already in leadership in a local church. How can my church get mobilized? The course is very approachable in terms of groups of lay people who've got a heart to form something connected with their local church but reaching community in a fresh way, for them to do the training together, do the thinking, engage in the practice, hear the stories, and so be encouraged in that.
So if I had a group of people, and I'm thinking, I could really earth that by saying, well, the group of people in the church that are they are really, in a sense, wanting to be missional and thinking outside of the box, then the mechanisms of Fresh Expression provide a way or a portal into actually trying to pull those group of people together and maybe accessing what Fresh Expressions or what you're trying to do. They could access that education and perhaps enroll in or in that cluster, work with Fresh Expressions to develop and tease out that understanding, gives a bit of theological base, a bit of substance to it.
Yeah,
That'd
definitely.
Yeah.
Fresh Expressions is not intended to be any more than an umbrella description of a network and of a training provider that can resource and support people from any situation. It's entirely up to those individuals to determine what needs to happen in their context. So Fresh Expressions comes with no prescription. It comes simply as a means of support, but provides training, provides support, and can encourage people as they explore what is it that God is already doing or wants us to engage in, and what might it look like here.
So this is a tool, really. And it's a tool, I guess, in teasing what you're saying, what I'm hearing and bouncing back, is that actually they also come to contact with other like-minded people.
Absolutely.
So, and this is a vehicle not as apart from the church, but actually in terms of the gathered church as something that actually helps foster the local church to really engage its context.
Yeah, definitely. I think you could see it as helping to resource the mission arm of the church.
So, if I, what do we do to contact you? If somebody's listening to this, how do they move in the direction? How do we contact you? What would they do? If they lived in Christchurch, what would they do?
they'd get in contact with a guy called John Day or Spanky Moore, a couple of people who are key leaders in that environment. Anybody could make contact with me and I could put them on to the...
So you're on the website? You've got a website?
Website's just getting up and running.
Right.
Yep, it'll be there very shortly.
Or they could ring you on what?
021 546 379. Be glad to talk.
Great. Well, it's really been great talking. It's been brief, but you've excited me in the way that we've talked in. I'd like to carry on and talk about this, but time doesn't permit us. But hey, thank you so much for taking the time, and let's see where we go from here. Maybe down the track further we can revisit this and have another discussion and see some of the stories that are actually unfolding. But very excited to hear what's going on. Thank you, Lindsay.
Thanks, Graeme.